at my grandfather's will reading. The lawyer said my name and handed me $10. My father laughed first. My mother covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Around the polished table, every smirk said Emma finally got what she deserved. I kept my hands hidden so no one could see them trembling. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. Actually, there's a private letter, just for Emma. The laughter died so fast I could hear the air vent humming. My parents looked at each other, suddenly pale. They thought I had inherited nothing. What they didn't know was that the $10 was the trap. Before I dive into the story, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Let me know if you've ever been in this kind of situation. Your advice reminds me I'm not alone. If you had seen my family from the outside, you would have thought we were perfect. The Bennetts had money, a respected name, and a long dining table that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Every Thanksgiving, my mother, Susan, lit cinnamon candles before the guests arrived. My father, Richard, carved the turkey with the same silver knife his father had used. My brother Ryan sat near the head of the table, always pulled into conversations about business, college, and leadership. I usually sat near the window. That was where the light was best. Even as a kid, I noticed things no one else seemed to care about. The way steam curled off coffee. The way my mother's smile disappeared when she thought no one was watching. The way every framed family photo placed Ryan in the center and me somewhere near the edge. When I was 13, I spent months saving for a used camera from a pawn shop. The leather strap was cracked, and the shutter stuck when the weather got cold. But I loved it. I photographed boarded-up stores, bus drivers eating lunch alone, and kids racing bikes through puddles. One afternoon, I showed my mother a black-and-white portrait I had taken of an elderly woman outside a grocery store. She glanced at it for 2 seconds. "You look exhausted," she said. "Maybe spend less time wandering around." My father was worse. "Photography is a hobby," he told me, "not a future." Ryan never joined in loudly. He didn't have to. He had the easy confidence of someone who had never been asked to prove he belonged. By high school, he was already attending meetings with Dad. I was working evenings at a coffee shop and editing pictures on a laptop with a dead strip across the screen. When I got accepted into art school, I told them over dinner. Dad set down his fork. "You're walking away from everything we built." Mom folded her napkin carefully. "You're throwing away security for a phase." Ryan looked at me, almost amused, like he expected me to come crawling back within a year. I moved out at 18. The only person who never treated my work like a mistake was my grandfather, Henry. He never asked how much I made. He asked what I was trying to show. 3 weeks before he died, I visited his old house in Boston. It smelled like cedar, tea, and dust. Before I left, he handed me a worn film camera. "I had this before the company," he said. I stared at him. "You took pictures once?" Then he looked straight at me. "Don't let this family take away the way you see the world." I carried those words home, unaware they would soon become my only defense. When he died, I expected nothing. I only hoped he had left proof that I had never been invisible. The will reading took place in a law office where the windows looked down on Boston like the city belonged to whoever could afford the view. I wore a black dress and straightened my hair, not because I cared what anyone thought. That was what I told myself. The truth was, I could already hear my mother asking why I always looked unfinished. When I entered the conference room, Dad and Mom were seated near the head of the table. Ryan sat beside them, scrolling through his phone. Aunt Patricia gave me a thin smile. No one saved me a seat. I took the last chair near the door. The room smelled like leather, perfume, and burnt coffee. A clock clicked above a shelf of law books. At 10 sharp, Michael Collins walked in carrying a thick folder. He had handled my grandfather's legal affairs for years, and his face gave away nothing. He began with property, investments, jewelry, and family keepsakes. A vacation home went to Patricia. My mother received my grandmother's necklace. My father received several personal investments. Ryan was given assets connected to his future role in the family business. Each announcement brought a nod or a quiet smile. Then Michael looked at me, "To Emma Bennett," he said. "Henry Bennett leaves the sum of $10. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then my father laughed. It came out sharp and satisfied, like he had just won an argument we had been having since I was 13. "Well," he said, leaning back, "I guess Henry finally put a price on rebellion." Aunt Patricia looked down, but I saw her mouth twitch. Ryan exhaled through his nose. My mother touched the pearls at her throat. "You could frame it," she said. "Maybe call it your first profitable piece." That was when the room filled with smirks. Not roaring laughter. Something worse. Small smiles, sideways glances, people enjoying my humiliation while pretending they were above it. My face burned. I curled my fingers beneath the table until my nails pressed into my palms. It was not the money. I had never expected money. It was my mother's shoulders shaking as she tried not to laugh. For years, I had told myself there was a hidden part of her that was proud of me. Maybe she kept my photographs somewhere. Maybe she defended me when I was not around. That hope died in that room. I pushed my chair back. Then Michael cleared his throat. The sound was quiet, but it cut through every whisper. "Actually," he said, closing the folder, "there is a private letter, just for Emma." My father's smile vanished. What kind of letter, he asked too quickly. My mother straightened. She already received what Henry left her. Michael did not look at them. "The instructions are explicit. Emma is the only person authorized to read it." He led me into a smaller office and closed the door. A cream-colored envelope waited on the desk. My name was written across it in my grandfather's hand. A tiny camera was pressed into the wax seal. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first line said he was sorry for the pain I had just endured. The second said he needed me to see who my family became when they believed I had nothing. Then I reached the sentence that changed everything. The $10 was never my inheritance. It was the test. I read the sentence twice because my mind refused to hold it. The letter explained that Grandpa had moved his personal investments, the old building, and controlling voting rights in a private investment company into a trust years before he died. The documents were already signed. The transfer was legal. The letter was not giving me power. It was telling me where that power had been waiting. I sat in the small office with the pages spread across my knees, listening to the muffled voices behind the wall. My father was demanding answers. My mother kept repeating that something had to be wrong. Michael returned and placed another folder on the desk. "Your grandfather planned this carefully," he said. "Your father cannot reverse it. Neither can Ryan." I looked at him. "Why me?" Michael nodded toward the letter. Grandpa had answered that too. "You notice what everyone else ignores." The words broke something open inside me. For years, I had survived by telling myself I did not need anyone to believe in me. Then I discovered that one person had believed so deeply he had built a future around it. I pressed both hands over my face and cried. Not because of the money, because I had not been invisible. 2 days later, Michael took me to the building Grandpa had placed in the trust. It stood on a Boston street. Old brick outside. Sunlight pouring through tall windows inside. The floors were unfinished. Dust floated in the air like snow. Then Rachel Morgan, the gallery manager Grandpa had consulted, unlocked a storage room. My photographs covered the walls. The grocery store portrait, the boarded-up theater, the boy jumping his bike through rainwater, prints I had sold years ago to buyers whose names I never knew. Each one had a card in Grandpa's handwriting. Date, place. One quiet sentence about what he saw. I lowered myself onto the floor, holding his old camera against my chest. That was where grief finally caught me. While I was learning the trust, my family kept showing me exactly why Grandpa had created the test. Ryan sent me an article about artists who regretted abandoning stable careers. Mom told relatives I was nearly broke. Dad offered me a position at the lowest level of the company, saying the $10 had probably taught me humility. Then he asked his lawyers to examine whether I was competent to manage anything Grandpa had left. Michael's answer was simple. Everything had been completed before Grandpa died. Dad had no authority over it. For one hot, reckless minute, I wanted to send them pictures of every document. I wanted to call a family meeting and watch their faces collapse. My thumb hovered over the send button. Then I stopped. If I used money to prove my worth, I would still be living by their rules, so I chose something harder. For 3 months, I worked. Daniel Brooks taught me how the trust operated. Rachel helped me turn the building into a gallery and studio. I reviewed budgets, asked embarrassing questions, and stayed until midnight learning what I did not know. The exhibition would be about people and places others overlooked. At its center, I placed the check for $10. Then I mailed invitations to my family. Dad accepted because he thought someone else was funding me. He planned to expose me in front of everyone. This time, I let him come. He had no idea I had prepared for that moment. Opening night smelled like fresh paint, coffee, and cedar polish. Inside, people moved slowly from photograph to photograph. The first room showed my earliest work, a girl trying to understand why forgotten places felt more honest than beautiful homes. The second room held people most families passed without seeing, a janitor resting beside a school gym, a widow watering flowers outside a boarded apartment, a teenage boy repairing his mother's car beneath a streetlight. Then came the final room. Grandpa's camera sat beneath glass beside a photograph I had taken of him staring through a train window. Next to it was the $10 check. The card beneath it read, "Sometimes the smallest gift reveals the largest truth." Ryan arrived first. He stopped in front of the grocery store portrait. "This is all yours?" he asked. "Yes. How did you get this many people here?" "They came for the work." Mom entered wearing pearls and a careful smile. She kissed the air beside my cheek. "Emma, this is surprisingly polished." Surprisingly. One word, still a knife. Dad came in behind her, scanning the room instead of the photographs. He studied every older man in a suit, searching for whoever he believed had paid for everything. He faced me. "Who funded this? I kept my voice even." "That is not the question you really want answered." His jaw tightened. "Do not play games with me." "I am not." Before he could continue, Michael stepped onto the platform beside the final exhibit. The room quieted. Michael thanked everyone for coming, then looked toward my family. "Several months ago, Henry Bennett's public will was read," he said. "That reading did not include assets he transferred into a private trust years earlier." Dad stepped forward. Michael continued. "The trust holds Mr. Bennett's personal investments, this building, and controlling voting rights in a separate investment company, under documents completed before his death. Emma Bennett is the successor trustee and primary beneficiary." Silence. Not the cruel silence after my name had been read. A different kind. The kind that arrives when truth enters a room and no one can push it outside. Mom's face lost its color. Ryan stared at the check. Dad looked at Michael. Henry was not in his right mind. The medical reviews and legal records say otherwise. Michael replied. His decisions were deliberate and fully documented. Then the applause began. I heard it, but I watched my family. Mom reached me first. "Why didn't you tell us you never asked what the letter said? You let us walk in here looking foolish." "No," I said. "You walked in believing I was foolish." Dad pushed between us. "This event was designed to embarrass this family. It was designed to show my work. You put that check on display?" "Yes, to shame us." I looked at the $10, then at him. "I did not make you laugh that day. Grandpa did not make you laugh. You saw a number, decided it measured my worth, and enjoyed what you thought was my failure." Mom folded her arms. "We are still your parents. Then you should have acted like it before you knew I had power." Ryan finally spoke. "Are you taking control of the family company? No. You keep your role. Dad keeps what he inherited. Mom keeps hers. I am not taking anything from you," I continued, "but none of you will control the trust, this studio, or my decisions. I will not discuss my future with people who only respect me after seeing a balance sheet." Dad stared at me. For once. He had no answer. I pointed toward the check. "You thought $10 was the end of my story. I kept it so none of us could pretend this never happened." Mom's eyes flickered, but no apology came. Dad turned toward the elevator. Mom followed. Ryan remained, looking at Grandpa's photograph. Then he left too. The elevator doors closed, for the first time. Silence did not make me feel small. The next morning, I had to prove Grandpa had not merely chosen me, I had to prove I was ready. Dad met with 2 attorneys the week after the opening. Michael told me because Dad's lawyers contacted the trust, asking whether Grandpa's decisions could be challenged. The answer came back quickly. No fraud, no pressure, no confusion. Every transfer had been completed years earlier, while Grandpa was still running meetings, reviewing investments, and signing his own documents. Dad dropped it, not because he understood me, because there was nothing left for him to control. Mom sent 3 messages. The first said I had humiliated the family. The second said private matters should stay private. The third asked when I was ready to move past all this. I answered once. I'm willing to talk when you're willing to admit what happened. She never replied. Ryan's message was shorter. I didn't know Grandpa collected your work. It was not an apology. But it was the first sentence he had ever sent me without a joke attached. I left it unanswered. A week later, I walked into my first trust meeting wearing black jeans, boots, and Grandpa's camera strap around my wrist. The table was filled with people who had spent decades talking in numbers. A few of them looked at me the way my family always had, like I was temporary. So I opened my 3-year plan. We would protect the strongest investments. We would cap unnecessary spending. And we would use a portion of the annual profits to create live workspaces, equipment grants, and paid mentorships for young photographers who had talent but no connections. By the end, no one was smiling politely. They were taking notes. That mattered more than the applause at the gallery. Over the next several months, the empty floor above my studio became a residency space. Desks arrived, darkroom equipment arrived. So did 6 nervous artists carrying backpacks, grocery bags, and dreams they were almost embarrassed to say out loud. On the first anniversary of Grandpa's death, Michael brought me one final letter. It contained only a few lines. Wealth is not what you protect from others. It is what you build for them. I framed it beside the $10 check. That evening, Chloe, the youngest resident, stood in my doorway holding a battered camera. Do you ever worry people only see the money? All the time. I said, What do you do? I looked through the studio windows at strangers studying my photographs. I keep making work they can't ignore. Then I opened the gallery doors. This time, what Grandpa left me was no longer hidden in a letter. It was alive in every person walking through them. Grandpa did not leave me wealth to rescue me. He left me the freedom to decide who I would become. My parents taught me that money can expose people, but Grandpa taught me what power is for. Real love does not laugh when you are humiliated. Real family does not wait for a balance sheet before offering respect. I won because I refused to become like them. Have you ever had to protect your worth from the people who should have protected you? Share your story below. Send this to someone who needs it, and subscribe for the next story.